Before this video begins, I just want to take a minute to promote a few things that you guys might not be aware of. First of all, I'm a supported creator on the game Fortnite for those of you who are interested, so use my code Vex0r, Vex0r in the item shop. It really does help out a small creator such as myself. Second of all, not too many of you watching are aware that I also have a Twitch channel where I stream on a weekly basis, so for those of you who want to check that out, links are provided in the description. Anyways, that's all I've got to say, so hope you enjoy the rest of the video. I remember a time when I used to come home from school, tired after a long day of learning, right on upstairs to my bedroom, throwing my school bag into the messy abyss that was my closet, and instead of doing homework, went straight to powering on my Nintendo Wii, then proceed to go on a gaming binge for the next 2.5 to 3 hours. Today, I'd like to discuss the vast legacy that the Wii left behind. Let's take a look back and discuss the good, the bad, and the downright ugly behind the Nintendo Wii on this episode of Retro Tech. What is this, like the third Nintendo product being discussed on the channel? I mean, hey, thanks for providing me with an endless stream of content, Nintendo. In all seriousness though, welcome to the 4th episode of Retro Tech, the show in which we take a look at various tech gizmos or events relating to tech from history and break them down, explain them, and possibly even form new questions in regards to why a product was or wasn't successful. In most industrialized societies, just about everyone has a memory about playing a Nintendo console. Their impact was so powerful during the 1990s that children were more likely to recognize Mario than Mickey Mouse. It really seemed like Nintendo took the 90s by storm. Riding a massive wave of success, they gave no signs of stopping whatsoever. But sadly, that wave had somehow fizzled out in the early 2000s. Coming right off of the success of the GameCube in 2001, Nintendo desperately needed to make a fierce comeback in the gaming industry. The whole mess, if you will, behind that console, which you can find out by watching my video on it, also linked in the description, sent a shockwave that was felt throughout the entire company. It felt as though Nintendo had lost its Midas touch and was now seen as struggling to regain its footing in a field it once ruled a decade before. At least in the home console stage, as Nintendo has pretty much always been in the lead in regards to handheld consoles. This is due to two factors: the expansion of the video game industry and Nintendo's reluctance to embrace newer tech created what one would call the perfect opening that the PlayStation and later the Xbox would go in and take a slice of that sweet revenue pie. And take a slice they did. Sony not only displaced Nintendo entirely in the early 2000s, but nearly put the entire company into a position of irrelevance, thought once impossible but ever so likely given the PS2's success. Nintendo, who was struggling behind, now blindly looked to throw a Hail Mary pass to rescue the company. And unbelievably, throw it they did. After tireless, around-the-clock work, Nintendo finally had a product ready that they were absolutely confident would turn the tides to their favor once again. A brand new gaming console, of which the prototype was first shown by Nintendo Japan's CEO at the Tokyo Game Show in 2005 and then at E3 in the same year. It went by the name of the Nintendo Wii, also conveniently codenamed during development as the Revolution. Consumers were eager to try out the seemingly futuristic device in which games combined lower-end graphical capabilities with innovative new controls that transformed gaming from a stationary sport to more of an activity. This was perhaps best demonstrated by the game Wii Sports, which attempted to mimic real-world actions as closely as possible in its gameplay through new motion controls introduced with this console for an entirely new, and most importantly, unique console experience. It is worth noting, however, Many console developers have tried motion controls even as far back as the Sega Genesis, to mostly lackluster effect. You see, if you're ever going to best your competition, the first thing you'll need to nail down right away is a totally new experience, different from theirs. And Nintendo nailed this right off the bat. Each game on Wii Sports showcased both simplistic and complicated ways of control, divided among the various sports you could choose to play. For example, in the tennis segment, it wasn't necessarily complicated, rather a relaxing game with simplistic waggle controls which could turn into enjoyable matches between either another player or a bot. It didn't require a separate accessory to play. Contrasted to Wii Boxing, which was supposed to show how two different controllers coincided with one another. In this case, the Wii Remote plus another accessory, the nunchuck, or the joystick as I like to call it for more complicated play. For more context with this, you would quickly move the remote forward to simulate punching motions, while actually moving forwards, backwards, left or right with the joystick. Not going too much more in-depth than the other modes included in Wii Sports, bowling showed off a rather crude physics engine as well as how weight and velocity could be used in tandem. Baseball was there to emphasize timing and accuracy. And finally, golf was used to show how speed, strength, and velocity could work on the Wii in perfect harmony. And around Christmas, the golf and bowling resulted in many people throwing their Wiimotes through their brand new TVs to the amusement of the internet. Wear those wrist straps, people. But that's besides the point. How did this motion magic work in the first place, you may be thinking? All in the remotes. They used a combination of built-in 3D accelerometers and infrared detection to sense its position in 3D space when pointed at the LEDs in the little gray sensor bar. This design allowed users to control the game with physical gestures as well as button presses. The controller connected to the console used early-day Bluetooth with a 30-foot range. All of this could be accomplished due to the included feature of haptic technology. I'll put an exact definition of it on screen now. The Wii would release to the public in November of 2006 as Nintendo's 7th generation video gaming console and landed in all 4 markets around the world by December of that year. It started at a cool $249.99 USD, about $313 today adjusted for inflation. This really set the Wii apart from the competition, especially as it was marketed as a family console. It was far cheaper than its competitors at the time. 21 games were announced for launch day in North and South America, with another 12 announced for release a little bit later. More on that soon. Wii Sports came bundled with the console regardless, hence its massive popularity. Literally everyone who owned a Wii owned this game, myself included. If you wanted the full Wii experience, however, it wasn't cheap. The number of accessories that you could get for your Wii, like cases for the console or remotes, chargers, etc., were unfortunately not bundled with the console, and would cost you, the consumer, quite a pretty penny. Now that we've talked about the history leading up to the Wii and its launch, let's actually get to dissecting the core of what makes the Nintendo Wii in 3 key sections. This overwhelmingly makes up much of the Wii's legacy. The cultural impact alone is enough to span an entire video, but for now I'll mention it briefly. The Wii had a large selection of first-party exclusives like Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess and Skyward Sword, Metroid Prime 3, Corruption, Punch-Out, and many children's games, most of which were critically acclaimed and mostly loved by audiences. Not only that, it also came with some really good third-party exclusives like The Conduit, a challenging FPS with a stellar multiplayer, No More Heroes 1 and 2, 2 ultra-violent hack-and-slash games with a sense of humor that could make even Deadpool blush, Mad World, a game that was literally black and white but red all over, excluding the small bits of yellow, Monster Hunter Tri, hunt monsters, make armor and weapons to hunt bigger and badder monsters, etc. A hugely popular game, was Wii Play, which contained a selection of smaller games to play, much like Wii Sports. Wii Play ended up selling 28 million copies worldwide as of March 2018 according to Nintendo, making it the 5th best-selling Wii game and the 14th best-selling video game of all time. This, however, was not due to gameplay. That was terrible, except Wii Tanks. Wii Tanks was pretty good. The main reason the game saw such great sales was because it came bundled with a Wii remote. The Wii also did something practically unheard of today: free online. With this came the opportunity for games like Smash Bros, The Conduit, and Mario Kart to have online multiplayers to varying degrees of quality. Along with this came the Wii Shop, which opened the doors for people to some old Nintendo classics like Mega Man. Speaking of old classics, the Wii also had that so beautiful feature of backwards compatibility with GameCube games. The only catch was that you needed a GameCube memory card and a controller. The Wii's accessories were mostly done right, for the Wii Motion Plus served the purpose of giving players a more one-to-one motion control experience. The Wii Fit actually gave people a good workout, and even the plastic wheel helped immerse people into games like Mario Kart. To roughly sum up the good, it was one of the last consoles that didn't specifically rely on multiplayer or DLC, and yet had a multitude of action, adventure, platforming games, racing, and more. It was backwards compatible with the GameCube and, of course, ports of Nintendo games from older Nintendo consoles. Some games did it right, others on the other hand were the epitome of trash. A lot of developers either didn't know how to work with motion controls or simply threw games on the Wii for a quick cash grab, given that a lot of the worst games were ported from the PS2. I'm thinking the latter. The third-party multi-platform games like Call of Duty suffered a tremendous graphical downgrade and tacked on motion control gimmicks. Speaking of third-party games, oh boy, there were a lot. Many developers saw the Wii's family-oriented market as a chance to push out low-effort shovelware that would sell purely by its brand name, and many were notoriously broken. Many had badly implemented motion controls thrown in for no reason. Some even used slimy marketing ploys like Anubis II. You see, there was no Anubis the First, they just wanted it to look like it was part of a franchise to increase credibility. A Smurfs Dance Party game was even released, to unintentionally creepy results. And we're not even gonna talk about Game Party. The Wii came with a sensor that gave the Wii the ability to have pointer controls. Unfortunately, the sensor didn't work as well as people would have liked, given the fact that the most optimal placement would have been the middle of the TV screen. But for obvious reasons, this can't happen, and we're instead left with inaccurate pointer controls for every FPS on the Wii. Motion controls were often unnecessarily tacked on. Also, the sensor bar had an insanely thin, long wire that would quickly become a tangled mess, and if you had cats, one bite and that thing was toast. Pointer controls were mostly inaccurate. They even released an accessory called the Motion Plus that you attach to the bottom of the Wii remote to improve accuracy. You know, so it could do what the console was originally marketed to do, but correctly. The Wii also unfortunately didn't have a lot of genre choices either. For every Mario Kart, you had 25 knockoff racers like M&M Racers, Action Girls Racing, and Cars. There were loads of terrible FPS games, and pretty much everything else was family-focused, poorly made knockoffs of Mario Party. Even the Mario Party games on the Wii were widely known to be the worst of the series. And finally, there were too many accessories to count. Everything from gimmicky controllers like guitars, tennis rackets, steering wheels, and baseball bats, to gun grips, bowling balls, airplane steering controls, charging docks, swords, gel skins for the controllers, stands for the system. The list goes on and on and on. The Wii's influence on the gaming market led to both Sony and Microsoft to take a crack at motion control games. This would lead to the PlayStation Move and Xbox Kinect coming on the scene, and well, Sony gave up on that pretty quickly, but Microsoft on the other hand clung to the Kinect for a long time. Both the PS Move and Kinect reported unresponsive controls, crappy third-party games, and lack of any real innovation. Microsoft unfortunately pursued the Kinect with plenty of vigor, trying to force it on players with Xbox One, which led to allegations of it being a piece of spying equipment, and other allegations which would lead to Microsoft getting cold feet and abandoning the idea entirely. Although that isn't really the fault of Nintendo and the Wii, it still left a massive stain on the fabric of gaming history for years on players who didn't even own a Wii to begin with. The free online features were notoriously laggy. It was nearly impossible to play a round of Smash Bros. Online without experiencing full stops in the gameplay for seconds at a time, and most of the games didn't even allow you to play with friends, which is allegedly still happening even on the Nintendo Switch. Come on, Nintendo. The Wii also launched in limited numbers. For months, many people lined up for hours just to try and get one, only to leave empty-handed. Some even came to believe this was an intentional marketing strategy. And to that I ask, what do you think? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. And sadly, as the Wii's life cycle reached its end, many of its more successful game series had dropped the motion controls entirely, or at least made them optional. Developers had learned that it was safer to use motion controls only when it was actually more immersive within the context of the game. While many derided motion controls as a gimmick at first, Nintendo quickly proved them wrong, and the Wii not only went on to become the go-to party console of the generation, but also Nintendo's single most popular home console of all time, falling only under the Nintendo DS and Game Boy in terms of total lifetime sales. The Wii became known for its ability to get the whole family together, putting the kids, mom and dad, and even grandma on the couch together, and even up and moving. In conclusion, not only did the Wii dominate the generation in which it competed, but it returned Nintendo to prominence in the video game world, inaugurating a miniature golden age for the maker in the process. Because of its success, no console, except for maybe the Super Nintendo and the original NES, had so many classic AAA Nintendo titles available for it. Mario Galaxy, Wii Sports, Mario Kart, and The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess are just some of the blockbuster titles that came out for the console. Firing on all cylinders, the Wii also gained the attention and love of third-party devs who showered Nintendo with attention that the company hadn't enjoyed since the early 1980s. Though the Wii put Nintendo back into the game, it also demonstrated the amazingly potent power of innovative, disruptive technologies. Competing against much more powerful systems with thoroughly more modern video games, the Nintendo Wii was able to carve out a niche for itself that happened to not only be the biggest, but also grew the industry as a whole. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.